Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Worrall. I'm joined by Mr. Ian Macbeth. We are sponsored by Iceberg Digital. How are you, my friend?
Good. Actually, in the Iceberg WhatsApp group, they were all excited the last couple of days because they've just dropped Life Cycle 5, which includes their new sexy AI called Azir, which can do some funky stuff. So I'll keep you updated on that. But yeah, there's a lot of buzz going on in the WhatsApp group of all the agents at the moment around the AI tool that sits within that CRM or that piece of software. So yeah, as you mentioned it just made me think, oh yeah, there's all sorts of GIFs and emojis and all sorts going on in that WhatsApp group at the moment. But yeah, good. Feeling recharged. Had a nice little break. I'm in the I've just started a 48-hour fast as well for a little bit of a reset. So I'm gonna do that for 48 hours, try and get rid of some niggles from my last race, and also have a bit of a kind of summer holiday target bod as well.
Yeah.
Don't want to go to America with a dad bod. So yeah, just getting myself fundamentally set up for a 48-hour fast. How about yourself?
Yeah, good. And talk about the dad bod. I'm getting served a lot of adverts on social media about trying to get rid of a dad bod. I don't know whether that's trying to tell me something or whether it's just an age thing. But yeah, I'm good. Had a weekend of balance. Had a gym competition on Saturday, my first CrossFit competition, which was really quite enjoyable. Good day out at Bolton. Then we had a bit of a housewarming barbecue, British barbecue in the rain on Sunday. Although we were very fortunate, it did hold off. So had a few friends round, see the house, and yeah, a few drinks and a bit of a party. We were all good. Yeah, feeling nice and recharged. Bit of a funny week. I always think half-term weeks now as we're heading in. Obviously, we've had the bank holiday, so it's a shorter week anyway. And I was just driving into work thinking, right, my target this week is just going to be to speak to people. Try to speak to as many people as I can possibly speak to. Hope that too many aren't in a foreign country and that actually they've just got time off with the kids. Because it could be one of those weeks where not very much happens in the business when the phones aren't ringing as much. I think that's going to be sort of my focus. Going to be the conversation I'm going to have with my team very shortly.
Yeah, well, valuations over the weekend went crazy, especially kind of Sunday through to Monday. So maybe people are kind of seeing this as it's this window, isn't it, between now and the summer holidays? It's either really kind of sort of a bit slow or it can be really, really crazy busy. So we'll see what unfolds and see what's happening. But stock levels seem to be good. I did see a report from, I can't remember if it was Rightmove or Zoopla, one or the other, but for the first time last month in quite some time that buyer demand had actually reduced. I think it was a 4% reduction year on year, whereas that had been pretty much green for the last 20 months or something like that. So that was interesting. I don't know if that was a fallout of, I don't know, I can't really put it down to stamp duty or whether it was just a case of there was a lot of bloody bank holidays, hasn't there? It feels like every weekend is a bank holiday.
Time of year, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it is year on year, so there was the same last year, but maybe this year it was a bit different because the weather felt good for the last 6 weeks as well. Summer came a bit early, a bit dingy now. But yeah, to see buyer demand down was quite interesting, which probably sort of lenses into the topic of conversation we're talking about here is supply, demand, the power of negotiation, and sort of having your data and information to help with that as well. And yeah, you've kind of experienced a couple of things on the negotiating side of things that you thought would be good to share with the group, good to share with the audience as well.
Yeah, so I think we're in a really interesting market, and obviously all of the data that they talk about there is national. My feeling on our local market at the moment is that there are buyers out there, but they have an awful lot of choice. Therefore, they are negotiating or able to negotiate really, really hard. And we talked before about how to deal with lowball first offers. I've had an experience on both sides of the coin this week that I'll talk about because I've had a tough negotiation with somebody trying to buy from us, and then I was trying to buy a house for a family member of mine and trying to negotiate on the other side as well. So I'll talk about work in terms of the house we were selling first of all, and I really wanted to focus on time because my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, or if you think I'm wrong, that when we are negotiating on a sale, we want to move it forward and get a deal done quite quickly. That tends to be sort of my view on it. The longer you leave people, someone said to me, it was Lee Woodward's training with Stephen Brown a couple of weeks ago, and he used the term something like silence indicates consent or agreement. So actually, we want to go back. If we're rejecting an offer, we tend to want to go back really quickly. Is that a view that you share?
So quickly, yeah. I think catching people when the buzz is there,
Yeah,
and the emotions are heightened is really important. The caveat to that is I do sometimes worry that when the emotions are high and you are in that cycle, that actually if you go too hard too quick, there is an element that you can get the verbal agreement, but as we know, the legal transaction then takes a couple of months. So there is a case of sometimes people, that's why a cooling off period is in there for window salesmen and things like that. Is I have found as well that if a sale's going to fall through, it's going to fall through in the first week. And often that is a case of almost where an agent maybe has taken advantage or a buyer has got carried away with the excitement too quickly. So I do think that I agree with you in terms of that's the moment, but there has to also be a bit of pragmatic silence and buzz. And what I mean by that is if you're kind of negotiating everything within the hour, I think you're a little bit at risk. Whereas if you spend the day, even if you've got the answer from the seller or the buyer, sometimes it's not a bad thing to wait a couple of hours because it can feel a bit rushed if you're phone down, phone up, phone down, phone up. So yeah, I think it being in the excitement phase is really important to keep that momentum there, but too fast can sometimes also be a problem long term as well, I think.
Yeah, you get the buyer's remorse can kick in, can't you? So the negotiation that I had last week was one that took a week, basically, and we've still not agreed on it. So we had an offer on the Saturday following 2 viewings on a Friday. So this couple came and viewed the house twice in one day because the clients were going away the following week and they didn't want any viewings, and they were in a position ready to go and they wanted to come back and bring the parents. So right, it's hard. So got an offer on the Saturday, first offer, rejected the first offer as you do, and just expected it would be a conversation of right, what's your next offer sort of thing. They didn't put a next offer in. They said, all right, we'll leave it then. And I'm like, that's really unusual negotiating strategy. So it went a few days and I'm thinking, well, they'll ring me. Anyway, on the Wednesday, I was like, I've had enough. I'm going to have to ring them to try and get a higher offer out of them. And then we had 2 higher offers on the Thursday following that. So Saturday to Thursday, when you're negotiating, from the seller's perspective, that's quite a long time. Good negotiation on the buyer's part, I would probably say. And they increased and they countered the figure that we would accept. They were at 385. They weren't 390. They offered 387.5. But he said, and I said, well, we've got another couple of viewings on the house, which we did have. But he put a timeline on his offer. He said, I want an answer by lunchtime tomorrow or something like that. And when I told my clients this, it didn't go down very well at all. They felt that they were being really pressured. They'd also, as it happened, booked and were going on a bit of a holiday of a lifetime on Friday, I want to say. And this is all going on, and I'm in the house on Thursday night. I'm saying, look, I know this is terrible timing, but and I'm talking them through it. And ultimately, we're $2,500. We're like 1.5% off where they ideally really want to be, but because they've got this holiday, they've probably not really got the brain space for it. Anyway, had a conversation with the purchaser, explained their position. I don't think it's completely dead in the water, but what he had said originally is that his offer would go back to his second offer if it wasn't agreed before this deadline that he put on it. And I thought it was a very aggressive negotiation tactic, and it was a bit of a different use of time that we would normally see in a negotiation, because it's trying to put a little bit of pressure on the seller to accept his offer before they have any other viewings or potentially anyone else buys it. Have you come across a buyer doing that in the past?
I don't think so, to be honest. No, I mean, I've had buyers that have put an offer forward and then gone back on it to a lower offer, but not necessarily with the constraints of a timeline. Obviously, you experience it the other way when you're dealing with new homes developers. You know, from the top, they're kind of almost suggesting it has to be done by this point, or we won't, and they always do. But yeah, not with a buyer. It's interesting. What was the buyer's drive, motivation? What were they looking to do? Was it family home? Were they in rented? What was the reason for this sort of aggressive style of negotiating?
Well, interestingly enough, I asked him what he did for a living, and his negotiate. It was in without getting too much away, I suppose. There's just a small chance that one of these clients may listen to this. He is in law, basically, and disputes and what have you. And I thought, actually, that makes sense, and that actually helped me understand the reason for the conversation. And my clients are still away, so we've not really caught up on exactly where we were. Not wanted to burden them with this, but actually, when he told me what he did, it made a lot of sense as to how this has played out, and actually will help me have a conversation with my clients and explain, look, this is probably what he does, day in, day out sort of thing. Challenging and aggressive negotiations for a living. So then, naturally he would pass that over to that. I mean, it didn't help me get the deal done, and we might never get the deal done, and my clients might potentially regret it because they might end up having to take less in the future. But it was he was wanting to buy the house. There were two partners had their own house. They were coming together to purchase their house, and it was all area specific, very area driven, where they wanted to live, good schools, sort of. The area has really come up in terms of price and popularity over the last 5 years, I would say. And my client knows that. They bought in that area, and they've seen decent price growth, and are only moving because their families are getting bigger. So I still think we're in probably a position where we could get the deal done. It'd just be really interesting now to see what happens, given that deadline that's been set has already moved on, and given that my clients have probably had a little bit more time to consider it.
Yeah, I love it though as well, because it's a bit of a game, isn't it? This part of it, and if we're all playing the game, and it feels you kind of got the lawyer who's in disputes, who quite clearly has got the control element of things. They're really he's probably said to his new partner, I'll get us the deal we want here. And now he's got a certain status in the home life that he's got to achieve. He's probably saying what he's doing, and so there's an ego involved in it now as well. And there's an element of control, because he's a lawyer. So he feels elevated from the agent, and the average. They do that, lawyers do. They feel they're at a different status to the rest of the world typically. They don't have the control element above them. So they kind of invent their own rules. And he's kind of trying to invent his own rules of this game for you to play with. So there probably is a bit of testing going on at the same time, which is quite interesting. I always find that you kind of, when you're in negotiation, there's a couple of different couple of hats that you have to put on. It would appear that with him, he wants a win. So the only way this deal gets done is if he feels like he's won. And then it becomes a case of the price has to be put to one side for a second. And you kind of got to go, he will get his price or the deal won't be done. So the seller has to accept, not through your conversation, but how you dress it up. They're going to have to accept that his price is where the deal is done or it isn't done, because that's the win that he gets. So then it's a case of moving it to all of the other things that don't involve price at all, and feelings, examples, timescales, all the other little fluffy stuff that you've got to kind of paint the picture of to the one side, and dress the buyer up as a strong proposal, because he's going to be a challenging person to work with on a sale, but he's also going to be black and white concrete because
Yeah.
he's a lawyer. So he is a secure buyer, and you'd like to think he's got his finances correctly done because he's in that side of things. So if the deal gets agreed, he's concrete and he should be a really strong buyer. But it's dressing up the other bits. The other bits have to align. I think Harvard call it the principal method. And it's kind of where you put the problem to one side and you focus on all of the other things. And from a negotiating point of view, ultimately what they're saying in this case is the problem is that the price doesn't align. So put that to one side and continue the negotiating with all of the other bits of information that you do know. And obviously you can't talk about it on this podcast, but you'll know your clients, their expectations, what they're looking for. You'll know them as a profile. You'll know the buyer as a profile, all the features, what's going on, the drivers, etc. And then it's trying to sort of almost just match those features up so that there's a bit of, okay, yeah, I like those parts of it. Now we just have to get to a price point of view, and kind of using that principal method sometimes makes it a lot easier. You can't wrap up every sale, right? So it might not go there, but to give it the best chance, you have to put the problem to one side, which is the price in this case, and try and sort of almost weave together some of the other bits that kind of make it feel a little bit like there's a layer there. And just being aware from the seller's perspective, look, the guy wants to feel like he's got a win. So, that's kind of where that sits. There's a bit of ego involved in it, which makes
it's the classic thing that we see so much, and terribly sorry to stereotype like this, but female starts a negotiation or has a lot of the contact with the agent, then the male comes in to get the deal done. You're right. There's a bit of ego there. There's a bit of macho-ness, right? This is, I'm going to make sure I look after my family. It's fine. Don't get me wrong. I've done the same sort of thing. So it's trying to balance that. And it'd be really interesting. I'll report back next week on where it goes and how it goes, because there has been a bit of time now. That was Friday. There's been a bit of time over the Thursday. Actually, it was been a bit of time over the weekend. Last time, and it was why I want to talk about this, I was a bit worried that the time between the first offer and the renegotiation might have made it a little bit challenging, but some purchasers have the discipline. I think in this market, purchasers, if they are disciplined, can get a really good deal, because I think what we're seeing is buyer demand is pretty strong, but getting offers and getting good offers off buyers is more challenging now than it has been for quite some time. It's just why we've got a conversation today on negotiation. And I had quite a different experience. So that was on the Thursday. I had quite a different experience on Friday and Saturday trying to negotiate for my family members because of emotion, right? So I got a family member who has been looking for a house for quite a while and has decided that he quite liked this house, had viewed it a couple of times, viewed it on Wednesday, and then had a conversation with me on Thursday. Right, I want to buy this house. So, right, well, I'll negotiate for you, and we'll see what we can do. So we put an offer in. We started 25 grand under the asking price. It's only just come on the market. 5%. 500.
Okay.
So we started 25 grand, and the thinking being property is leasehold, and therefore that is a valid negotiated term. Don't know how much the lease is. Can't buy the lease because the clients haven't been in it long enough, etc., etc. But the agent that we're negotiating with, I tried to ring them to put the offer in. It was 448. I think it was when I rang the office. The office said, no, a bit later, 5 to 5, I think it was. Phone lines, our offices are now shut. Our opening hours are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Please call back when the office is open. I'm like, it's not 5 p.m. Why is the phone line shut? So I had to send this girl an email. She said, oh yeah, our phone line's shut at 4:45. I was like, well, say that on your answer machine then. Don't. I'm here trying to negotiate an offer. Anyway, that aside, I'll get off my high horse. We went through a negotiating process. First two offers rejected. 475, 480 rejected. And I said to my family member, I was like, right, let's sit and wait. I said, he's not going to be increasing his offer. The leasehold thing is an issue. And we think that it's probably, I'm putting a 10 grand price on it. So effectively, you've got it priced at this. I'd also found out that there was no other viewings on the property that had been booked, and there was nobody else. They had 4 viewings, been on the market 10 days, 4 viewings. They had some differing feedback, but he was the only one that was in the game for it. And then I saw him on Saturday. It's like 10 o'clock Saturday morning, and he says, "I've gone direct to the client. I've increased my offer." I was like, "What?" I said, "So this is why I wanted to talk about time." I was like, "Right, time is our friend in this process. So we put in 2 offers quickly rejected on Friday. Now we're going to sit back over the weekend. We're going to let them sweat, and I'm going to get it you for 480. Anyway, he ended up paying 490 on Saturday because he couldn't wait. He just kept saying to me, "All I want to do is cut through it and get the deal done." And that was purely emotion, not logic on that side. He said, it's the house I want to buy. I'm not bothered about, the difference in the money. And I just thought they were 2 completely different buyers. And I had been on the receiving end of 2 completely different situations when I was trying to buy and when I was trying to sell. But I do believe that if we'd have waited, we'd have got it at the price that I wanted to get it at. But ultimately, it's not my decision. So I was a bit pissed off on Saturday. I was like, "Well, you wasted my time," but actually just wanted the house. So what it is what it is. But time on the purchaser's side can be really helpful because it can help you get it. But in this case, time was a problem for him because he wanted the peace of mind of knowing that actually the deal is done and he's got this house to look forward to.
And that's why information is so important for us, because we have to know the types of personalities we're dealing with and what the drivers are. And as agents, we get quite caught up in the price war, but really it's not necessarily a war of pricing. Everyone's got different goals and different sort of reasons and motivations. And if someone really wants the property, then they're going to pay the money to get the property. But the question is, what is the negotiation tactic that we're taking? Because we want all parties to feel like they've got a good deal that works for them. And the only way you can do that is by, again, kind of removing the problem or removing the pricing element of things and really getting to focus on the interests for each parties, I think. And for me, you can only use your own experience, can't you? The house I sit in today, we negotiated hard on. It was vacant for 3 years and we negotiated hard on the price. Whereas the house that I bought before that, we paid over the asking price for, because it was a bum fight for it. And we wanted the property. We wanted both properties, but with very different interests, behind them. So even as an agent, I've sat in this house negotiating 79 grand off the asking price, sat in the house before paying 11.5 grand over the asking price. So
it just that is the perfect example. As I was talking through the story there with my family member and that negotiation, and then the other negotiation from a work perspective where I'm trying to get my client the best price. It just goes to show that no one negotiation is really the same. You've got to, as you said, you've got to find out more about the people involved and their situations, and use that to try and get the deal done. Not use it to your advantage, not use it to necessarily, get more money, although that is our job, but actually get the deal done that works for both parties. Because you're exactly right. One of the things that I picked up what you said earlier is when the emotion of getting a deal and the excitement runs really high, often people can change their mind. And I think that's something that we need to remember as well, and take a step back and make sure that actually this deal is what they really want. They're not just getting carried away in the excitement. But every negotiation is different. Every client is different. It's kind of part of the joy of the job, I think, getting those deals done. I agreed a deal for another friend of mine who's selling his house with us at the moment, told the first-time buyer that exactly the same thing happened. Mail took over the negotiation, wanted to get the deal done, got a decent deal, but we got a good deal for our client as well. Purchaser actually shrieked when I told him that his offer had been accepted. So my colleague said, "Oh, well, not such a stern negotiator now," but that is part of the joy of it as well. Hearing people so excited about getting the deal done. Again, negotiation took a few days. I think that probably is pretty typical from what we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, I think as well, some of the things that I've always liked to use, I love the negotiating side of things. Some people love valuing and being in the living room and, the contract kind of chase. I wasn't a huge fan of that personally. I loved being in the middle of the office, like just negging the deals and getting, big files on my desk and just getting things wrapped up. I just loved that part of it. And when an offer came in, I kind of always had this same sort of technique that I took to the approach, unless it's straightforward, asking price, deal done, let's crack on. But if we were negotiating prices, then I'd always kind of do this like skirmish call, where especially if there hadn't been an offer on the property previously, I would kind of go in reviewing feedback ultimately. But at that moment in time, I hadn't got any intention of kind of talking offers and figures. And obviously I would come back to them later, but I knew that there was an offer on the table, but it was more a skirmish mission for me. I wanted to know where we're at. And I kind of would bring the seller up with a view, look, I think they're interested. I think they're going to offer. I don't know what price. The type of conversation I've just had with Mr. or Mrs. feels like it's going to be a bit of a hit on the asking price, but this is the position, this is them, this is da 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 da. So I would always say I like them as a buyer, but I'm not sure where the pricing is going to kind of be. And then I would kind of just listen to the feedback, and I just needed to get a lay of the land. I needed to know where the lines were in terms of where we're at. And often a seller would then go, well, look, we're open to negotiation. We found this, or we've done that. Or they would say, well, look, we're not dropping anything from the asking price. But it's good information because you know where you sit then. You know where you're going to need to, once we know where the lines are, obviously our goal is to get them to meet in the middle. But if we know we're so far adrift on one or the other side, then we know where we've kind of got to put our energy a little bit. And yeah, questions are always the key thing. Have you listened to Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference?
No, I've not actually. I've watched some of his tutorials on Masterclass.
It's an unbelievable one to listen to for estate agents because for those that don't know, Chris Voss, he was a hostage negotiator, and obviously his goal was, he said he had two outcomes for every call that he would go into. Hostages would be saved or everyone would die, because basically the hostage taker was going to die. Really, that was the thing. So does he save the lives of the hostages or not? And he always used this black swan analogy, which was finding out what the black swan was for the hostage negotiator. And that's what we're talking about here, is finding out what the emotional pull is, what the goal, the driver, the interest, however you want to dress it up, which never sits within the price. In reality, it's something else. And the price is kind of the bit that does the deal, but actually it's all of these other bits that kind of help us get to that deal. And that black swan is something that I think estate agents have to really sort of try and uncover from buyer and from seller, because if we can get them to align, then the deal's getting done and everyone feels like they've won. And that's, really what we want to try and get from it. We want the buyer to feel happy they've got the right sale, and we want the seller to feel happy that they've got the right price, the right buyer, etc. But the black swan is something to always think about, I think, as an estate agent, is what is it? And you kind of do those skirmish missions of questions. And Chris Voss talks about, there's a particular phrase, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So that's his kind of caveat to things. So with your lawyer buyer, you could put on him, for example, it sounds like you want to be in control of timescales and pricing here. Is that right? And that makes him sound like a bit of a dick. So does he want to accept sounding like a bit of a dick, or does he want to come back, well, actually, I do love the house, and there might be something else? Or he might just straight up say, yeah, the price is the most important thing for me here. But then you know where you are. Okay, so it sounds to me like that is exactly where you're at. There's no other factors that come into play, which means you're going to be happy to walk away from this one and go for another one if the price on the other one is right, because it's the money that's the most important thing. So it's kind of trying to get them to almost move down another little avenue and open them up a little bit. And those two different methods that I mentioned there, the principal one from Harvard and the black swan sort of approach from Chris Ross, I always think they're quite interesting to sort of play that game. But the good thing is for us as agents, we have all the information. We're kind of we're in the control center, right? We know everything that's going on. And the worst thing that we can do as agents is let our emotions get into it and our feelings get into it, because actually there's more than enough to go around.
Yeah.
We're just information passers. That's all we're doing within this, is we're sharing information in a certain style that will hopefully help both parties get the outcome that they're looking to get at the end, really.
Yeah, I should have mirrored him when he said Thursday lunchtime, really. Thursday lunchtime?
Yeah.
Tried to find out why that particular point in time was chosen. It was probably just a tactic, I would imagine, but that would have come out in that some of the stuff is very relevant to estate agents. And I always remember Sam a couple of years ago saying, we're in real estate, we're not working in life or death here. It's well worth remembering these things are really important to people, but other people have to negotiate in tougher situations than we do. And we started talking about time and how time can kill deals or make deals in those situations. Time can have a massive impact. So I think it's just a really interesting market that we're in at the moment, and the negotiation tactics that you've got, or I think the skirmish missions, as you call them, of fact finding. What you said there about finding out the black swan, to me, that's really important, a really important part of what we do as a business. The person that is doing the viewing is most likely to be doing the negotiating. And what I found really useful is you get to meet the person and you get to actually find out a little bit more about their black swan. And you also, if you've got the owner coming back to meet you after the viewing, you've got an opportunity to get to know them a little bit better, find out what their motivation is, find out what's really important for them. Because, of course, things change in this scenario. If my clients have already found a property and then we're talking about that onward plan, it's probably quite a different conversation in terms of that. And when the time element of it is uncertain because they've not found anywhere, it always makes negotiation a little bit harder. You've got somebody pushing really hard, using time to think it's a really good thing to get the deal done, whereas actually, probably what I should have explained actually is these time pressures at the moment with what my client's situation, that's not important to them. That's not going to be really, that's not going to be helpful in the negotiation. So I'll go back and have a conversation on that today, and we'll see where it goes. I'll report back. And then on the other one, the family member, his time thing was, I want to get the deal done. So it just goes to show different motivations, and there's no one size fits all policy, I think.
Yeah. And, with the family member that's gone direct, he's jumped straight in, 2 feet. It may be that he's the example that we used at the beginning. It may be that after he sees the lease pack come back or has the survey report come back, he may recalibrate kind of the price that he's happy to pay, because if he has potentially paid 5 or 10 grand over what he potentially needed to for that property, he might get more information about it, and in his mind he might think he's overpriced himself, and that might be where a deal could fall away potentially because there was too much excitement at the beginning. It's a great point that you mentioned on the viewing, because I think this is a big part of it for me. Is I always felt the negotiation starts in the viewing, even if you don't have an offer. The expectation setting and the information starts on the viewing. What I used to love from a viewing point of view, if there was interest, especially 9 times out of 10 it's a couple, if there was interest, then the little technique that I would do right at the end of the viewing is I could see that they were interested, but they're not going to discuss in front of me an offer because they need to have that private conversation. So I used to say, well, look, I can see you like it. I've got another 10 minutes before I need to go for my next appointment. It's a big decision. I'll step somewhere, kitchen, outside, whatever it may be, depending on weather and stuff. You guys have another look round. I've got viewings later on today. So if you like it and you want to talk figures and prices, probably the best thing to do is let me know your offer while we're here, because we can get some feedback on it. But you guys go and have that conversation privately, upstairs, downstairs, wherever it may be. I'm suggesting that they're going to offer, but I'm also giving them the privacy away from me to go and do it, because the worst thing that an estate agent can do is say, well, what offer do you want to make? And then put the the person in the relationship that wears the trousers on the spot in that moment of like awkwardness, that just wouldn't work. It makes it difficult. But just that little breathing space to say, you go over there privately, and then we're in the game. The game has started, hasn't it, of negotiating. So that's a nice little technique to do on a viewing, which does, like you said, it works really well if the same person's doing the viewing that's then negotiating the offer, because you've understood the interests, the feelings, you've met them face to face. So we're
got a bit of rapport as well. They know you're not a knobhead. Hopefully, that's there's that personal element of it, and also I think you're absolutely right. Negotiation starts at the viewing. There's so many things that you can drop into conversation in a viewing that, to the untrained ear, would just be conversation, but actually, how many viewings you've got booked, how many viewings you've already had, what the owner's position is. If it's no chain, you can drop that in. These are all little nuggets that you've dropped into conversation to help that. But also in terms of questioning, I think questioning buyers at a viewing is so important. How long you've been looking? What's the best house that you missed out on? What's the best house that you've seen? It's the first one that we've seen. If it's the first one they've seen, you're probably going to be doing pretty well to get an offer on the day. I would imagine. What's their position? How many have they had a look at? All of these, you can start to build a picture of how serious the buyers are, and then you make a decision, because there's no point in taking the time to give them some space if they've literally woke up that morning and decided to start viewing houses, and then that's the first one that they've seen. Very unlikely that they're actually going to offer. So you can start building a picture, but also you can start putting your client's position over in a strong way at the viewing. I think that's really important. The thought that we just open doors is complete rubbish.
Well, it's the steps, isn't it? Like you said there, if it's the first one they've seen, then really the next step is a second viewing. It's not an offer.
Yeah.
So it's understanding the rules. Now, that property, we might have 10 viewings on it that day, and it's gone Monday. Yeah. They're going to miss out. That's that. They might be the only viewing that we've had since the 3 that came in the first weekend that it launched. Actually, if they do like it, the timing, that shouldn't be their hindrance. So our goal is to say, well, look, you've got all your viewings booked in on Thursday. You like this one. What about Friday morning? We get a second viewing penciled in so that you can kind of see them all and get a vibe, and second view some of the others that you like. And if it is their primary, and if it is their number one, you get the buzz and the excitement back. And our goal is then to get the second viewing book rather than to get the offer extracted there and then, which would just push them away ultimately. So yeah,
absolutely. I always love, one of my favorite questions at the end of the viewing is, so do you want to buy it? Just waiting. Like you only say it with certain people after certain viewings, but I love that the smile between the couple. Yeah. That there's an offer coming, and it might not necessarily be there and then, it might not necessarily be that day, but you can confidently shut the door and lock up, knowing that things have gone well and you've got a bit of an exciting negotiation to come. Because I'm like you, the negotiation for me is, if that's all I did as part of the job, I'd be all right, because I think there's a proper buzz about doing it. And hearing the shrieks from the purchaser or the seller that I mentioned earlier, that's what's great about this job, what's great about this industry, in my opinion.
And just to finish as well, it doesn't just end when the price is agreed. That buzz, you need to ride that momentum all the way through to sales memorandums and chase through that last bit, because so many estate agents just agree the price.
Yeah.
And then even if they just get it to memos, that they do nothing with it for the next 10 days. And the buzz is lost because buyers don't realise. It's like, right, congratulations, you got it. We're going to They get some stuff on email, and that kind of excitement, it kind of just can disappear very quickly. But they've still got their Rightmove notifications on. They're still getting called by other estate agents, and people think taking the buyer off market, as they call it, when you're dealing with things at Gazelle with a buyer reservation or a property reservation, getting the buyer off market is very difficult. It's easy to get the seller off market because you change the status to sold on Rightmove, but getting a buyer off market is very difficult. So it's just remembering that you've got to keep that momentum going with buyer all the way through to search is paid for, mortgage valuation booked or survey done, some sort of financial commitment, even if it's 250 quid.
Yeah.
The sooner you get the financial commitment from the buyer, the much more concrete that sale is. So, right, that's part of the negotiating too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if time can make or break a negotiation, the saying time kills deals in terms of property transactions, it absolutely does. And I do think that those first few weeks are absolutely key to setting the pace. And you're right, it's part of the negotiation. If you're negotiating it and just leaving it, then you're not doing the job to the best of your ability. You're right, you need to be getting the sales memorandums out immediately. You need to be making sure that they're making progress and making sure that the purchasers in particular know their obligations. If your client isn't legally ready, that they're on the phone to the solicitor the same day and getting all that set up. Because how many times do we have to wait 3 weeks for draft contracts to go out? And you're like, well, that's 3 weeks lost. It's not at the front, it's at the end where everyone's stressed and there's no trust and the sales fall through because they wanted to be in for the kids to start school in September and they missed it. Whatever that motivation might be, those initial weeks can you just basically take them off the front to add them onto the back if you don't get the work done. So yeah, absolutely a key part of negotiation where time will kill the deal.
Yeah, 100%. Hopefully everyone enjoyed, that kind of sharing. Thank you for sharing your stories and our thoughts and advice. And if you've got other tips and suggestions, and you're watching on the socials or listening, drop it in the comments. It would be interesting to hear what other people think about it as well. And if you're an estate agent out there, you think you've got a really good case study or idea around this and you want to evolve this episode, let us know and we'll get you on. We'll have you on as a guest to kind of talk about it and continue it forward. I know there's some phenomenal negotiating trainers out there and some phenomenal estate agents when it comes to negotiation. So yeah, we'd love to have you on as a guest to kind of talk about it and do a part 2 of this episode, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't say what I'm about to say just for that. It's genuine. We do this because we love our industry. We want to see it improve and get better. If you have enjoyed it, like Ian says, reach out, drop us a comment, come on, talk about your negotiation tactics. That's kind of the whole point of this podcast, sharing and making the industry improve and get better. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to Iceberg for sponsoring today's episode. I'm Mark Worrall. He's Ian Macbeth, and we'll see you again next week.